Hello and welcome to the 23rd installment of my Pokemon Generation 3 ROM hacking series. The focus of this tutorial is to learn how to replace vanilla battle sprites with custom or updated sprites. To do this, we'll be utilizing a few new tools. unLZ GBA by HackMew, all three of the Advanced Series programs by WeChew, IrfanView, and GIMP. Both IrfanView and GIMP are image editing tools that weren't initially created for ROM hacking, and they're both free to download. This video will be broken down into the following segments. How do I index an image? How do I replace a battle sprite? And how can I replace a Pokemon battle sprite more easily? For this example, I'll be inserting the battle sprite of Cyrus shown on screen. There are a few important things you need to check before inserting your sprite. Firstly, make sure that your sprite is exactly 64 by 64 pixels. 80 by 80 sprites are common, so if you happen to be working with one, you'll either have to expand its dimensions or find a new sprite. Secondly, your sprite should consist of a maximum of 16 colors. If your sprite has more than 16 colors, those extra colors will be randomly replaced by one of the original 16, which might make your sprite look ugly. Finally, your sprite's background color must be different than every other color on the sprite. For instance, Cyrus consists of 15 colors while his background color is purple. This works well since Cyrus doesn't use the color purple for his sprite. We're done with the prerequisites. Open your sprite in IrfanView. Under the Image menu item, click Decrease Color Depth. In the dialog box that pops up, make sure the option 16 colors, or 4 bits per pixel, is selected, then click OK. If your sprite changed at all, then it consisted of more than 16 colors. You'll have to restart this process all over again and do some retouching of the image. Next, click Ctrl-A, then Ctrl-C to select and copy the image. Make sure not to copy anything else. Click Image, Palette, Edit Palette. A dialog box will appear with all of the image's palette entries. This should look familiar to you if you've done any work with tile sets in Advanced Maps Block Editor. I explain what palettes are and how they work in my tutorial titled The Nature of Tiles if you're a bit rusty on the basics. Otherwise, you should know that the first entry in the palette is dedicated to the background color, or the transparency color. We want this color to be purple, but IrfanView shows that it's black. If we proceed like this, then Cyrus's black clothing will become transparent when displayed in battle, and the purple background will be displayed instead. Knowing this, you should be able to conclude that we need to switch the positions of the first black entry and the purple entry. If you click on the black entry, you can see that its index and RGB values are given. It's at index 0 and its RGB values are all at 1. Now let's select the purple entry. Its RGB values are 163 and 165 respectively. We need to remember these values, so I suggest you either use your brain or just write them down somewhere. Double click on the purple entry and you should be able to edit its RGB values. Change them all to 1 since that's what the black color consisted of. Once you're finished, click OK. Now we need to edit the first black entry to match the purple color's RGB values. The colors have been swapped. You'll notice that your sprite looks ugly now, but don't panic. Save the image over the old one, then open your sprite in GIMP. As soon as your sprite is loaded, paste the old sprite over top of the ruined sprite. You should have the old sprite copied from IrfanView. Now that our sprite is repaired, click File, Export As. Select your sprite, then click the Export button. Then click the Replace button. One more dialog box will appear. Check that yours looks like mine, then click Export. We're done with GIMP. Exit and choose Discard Changes. Everything we just did is what we call indexing an image. Now that our sprite has been indexed, we can move on to actually inserting it into the game. I'll be using Emerald for this insertion, but the process is the exact same throughout all Gen 3 games. Open unLZ GBA. We can't do anything until we load a ROM, so let's do that. unLZ will load every image in the entire ROM along with their respective palettes. At the top right of the window, we can switch between the 16 color palette mode and the 256 color palette mode. You can view these palettes in the box at the bottom right of the window. The most important part to navigating unLZ is the two white boxes to the right of the window. The upper box indicates which image we're currently viewing, and the lower box indicates which palette we're currently viewing. We can change the image value to view whatever image we want to edit, and the palette value will be updated along with it. I'm going to replace the Team Magma admin sprite with Cyrus's sprite. In order to do this, we need to find the Magma admin sprite in unlicensed. Unfortunately, there's no clear-cut way to do this. In the video's description are two links, one to a bunch of FireRed image values and one to a bunch of Emerald image values. If the image you're trying to edit isn't listed out for you in one of those two links, you're going to have to do some work and find the image yourself. In Emerald's case, image 1944 is the Magma admin sprite. Type 1944 into the white box, then click the Go To button. From here, click Import, then select your indexed sprite. It will be loaded into unlicensed in place of the old sprite. All that's left to do is to save our changes. Click Write to ROM and a dialog box will pop up. Check every box other than the Export Palette box. You'll also have to open your ROM in a hex editor such as HXD and find some free space. Once you have your offset, paste it into the image offset box, then click OK, and you should get a sort of repointing success message. Before we can close unlicensed, click Write to ROM one more time. This time, only check the Export Palette and the Auto Abort if new data is bigger boxes, then click OK once again. We're finally finished. Let's close unlicensed and view the result in game. I changed the first Rival Battles trainer sprite to the Magma admin sprite. As expected, instead of Maxie's sprite showing up, Cyrus's sprite appears. But what if we also want to change some of the Pokemon battle sprites? For example, what if we want to update all of the original Emerald sprites with updated DS-style sprites from Gen 4? We could use unlicensed to replace every single sprite, or we could take a shortcut, which is exactly what we're going to do. I provided a link in the video's description to updated sprites of the entire national dex, including every generation through Gen 5. Gen 6 is available separately, which I'll provide a link to as well. If you download the bulk archive, you'll end up with 5 folders as shown on screen. In these folders is each Pokemon with their respective hex values as their titles. This naming convention is important, so make sure not to change them. To update every sprite with an updated sprite, copy and paste each image in the Gen 1, Gen 2, and Gen 3 folders and place them all into a single folder as shown on screen. The Advanced series comes with 3 programs. We're going to be working with Advanced Pokemon Sprite Editor first. On program startup, we aren't able to do anything until we open a ROM, so go ahead and do that. After a ROM is loaded, you'll be able to scroll through every Pokemon's front and back sprites. We're going to be bulk replacing every sprite with their updated sprites. To do this, click File, Import All Images. From there, select the folder with the Gen 1 through 3 sprites, then click OK. The program will then start replacing every sprite, which will take a few minutes. After the replacements are done, you can scroll through and see that every sprite was indeed updated. Finally, click File, Save All Changes, find some free space in your ROM, then click OK. That's it. You can check out the results by simply getting into a battle in-game. But what if we want to replace a sprite with a different Pokemon sprite? A lot of hacks implement Pokemon from other generations, so we're going to have to be able to change an individual sprite with an external sprite. To do this, navigate to the sprite you're changing, then click the Edit button. A new window will appear prompting you to either individually load each front sprite and back sprite, or you can import them all at the same time using the Import All button. This is what I'm going to do since the sprite I want to use has all of its components together in one file. After loading your sprite, click the Synchronize Palettes button, then click OK. Finally, click the Write to ROM button, enter a free space offset, then click OK. Now that our sprites have been changed, we need to reposition them to look nice on the battlefield. Open Advanced Pokemon Position Editor, then load your ROM. Navigating to the replaced Bulbasaur gives us an offset Snivy. By offset, I mean the opponent's Snivy sprite is pushed too far downward and isn't centered properly. To fix this, you can manually move the sprite around with the 3 boxes at the bottom of the window, or you can click the Auto Position button, which will center both the enemies and the player's sprite. Be careful though, the Auto Position button doesn't account for sprites that are elevated, like this Pidgeotto. The original Gen 3 Pidgeotto sprite was standing on its feet, but the updated sprite is flying. To fix this, simply increase the enemy altitude value and a shadow will appear beneath the Pokemon, indicating elevation or flight. Unfortunately, there's no way to automatically fix every single sprite with a single button, so you're going to have to skim through each sprite and reposition them manually. Make sure to click Write to ROM, on each sprite to save your changes, or click File, Save All Changes. There's only one thing left to talk about. If you have replaced a Pokemon with an entirely different Pokemon, for example if you replaced Bulbasaur with Snivy, you're going to have to change its icon. An icon is that little sprite that pops up when the player opens his or her party screen. To do this, open Advanced Pokemon Icon Editor, then load your ROM. Navigate to the icon you want to replace, then click File, Import Image. At this point, you'll be prompted to select an icon. I've provided a link in this video's description to some of the Gen 4 and 5 icons. After selecting your icon, a new box will appear showing you the changes. Check that your box looks similar to mine, then click OK. Finally, click Write to ROM and your changes will be saved. As an additional note, you can click the Revert button to revert back to the original Bulbasaur sprite. Be careful though, you cannot use this function if you've already clicked Write to ROM. That's everything I plan to discuss in this tutorial. Hopefully you all learned something valuable from this, and if you have any questions, please feel free to ask either over at PokeCommunity or right here in my video's comments section. Thank you so much for being my audience, and I'll be back in the 24th installment of this series.